This is episode 572 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing. I'm president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. We're going to start this show with something a little different. I am joined by Carol Wight. She is the executive director of the New Mexico Restaurant Association. And they and we are going to be involved in some legislative battles here during the 30-day session, which kicks off later today as we record this, regarding a couple of issues. But we're going to start with mandatory paid leave, not to be confused with paid sick leave. But welcome to Tipping Point, New Mexico, Carol, and let's get into these issues.
Thank you for having me, Paul. Let's do.
Yeah, so this is a issue that came up in the 60-day session. The bill, SB 11, failed after making its way through the Senate. We expect, and I'll ask you flat out, is it the same bill, same basic concept? And what are we looking at here with mandatory paid leave?
So we do have a new bill. It's House Bill 6. There's a bill on the Senate side as well that is not yet pre-filed, so it doesn't have a number. And it's quite different, but it's still going to be very costly for New Mexicans.
What differences? Now, there were tax increases in the previous iteration on employers and employees, both. I assume the money has to come from somewhere. So where will the money come from to create a trust fund, if you will, for this paid leave proposal? And any other major differences would be appreciated if you could explain those.
Sure. Well, the way they're coming up with the money is just a little bit different. In the first couple of years, it's the same. So it will be a tax on employees at 0.5%. And then it will be as well as a 0.4% tax on employers. So that's how they come up with the money in the first few years. Then it's all based on the premium, because they actually added actuaries to this. And if you don't know what that is, that's like insurance people that know stuff about insurance. So before they had the Workforce Solutions Department coming up with the premiums, and that doesn't really work because they know nothing about insurance, and this is an insurance program. So it builds a fund of about $463 million annually. And if you want to think about that in a way, it's 4 times larger than the unemployment fund. And this is supposed to be administered by the Workforce Solutions Department, who did not do a great job in administering unemployment insurance during COVID. And then there's, if you're an employer, you certainly have questions about how they're administering that fund right now.
Okay. And would this be, I believe, employers of 5 and more people would be forced into this program? Because in the previous iterations, the very smallest of employers were not included. Is that similar?
So it's similar. It does include those employers with less than 5 employees. They do not pay into the system necessarily if they stay under the 5 employees, but they have to administer the system for their employees. So they have to quarterly, they have to every pay period take money out of their employees' paycheck and quarterly send that into the government. So it's still the administrative burden on those smaller businesses. It's just they don't take the 0.5% from their, 0.4% from the employer.
All right. So this would have a negative impact on restaurants, of course. Any other? What are the specific concerns about it? Any other things you want to highlight about this particular bill?
The cost is a big one, and it comes on the back of the Healthy Workplaces Act, which is the sick leave that is a burden all on the employer. It gives every employee in the state 8 days of paid sick leave. that the employers have to pay for. And now on top of that, we're going to give them 21 days of paid family medical leave. And the interesting thing is that the Department of Workforce Solutions decides whether this person gets to take time off and how much this person gets to take time off. And then they let the employer know about 10 days prior to this person taking the time off. So, and it's not, no one's arguing the difficulty of taking time off for medical leave or the birth of a child, but businesses do their best to accommodate good employees. And again, now is not the time for another tax on businesses and the citizens of New Mexico. New Mexico has a lot of money right now, and if this is a real priority for New Mexico, they can build that fund with the signing of a pen, and they don't have to take the money from New Mexicans or our small businesses.
All right. Well, so we'll be hearing a lot about this, I presume, this legislative session, and trying to push back against it. And I appreciate the New Mexico Restaurant Association doing that. Real quick, there is another issue that I know will be rearing its ugly head this session on alcohol taxes, and specifically imposing a 25-cent per drink tax on alcohol. Obviously, this is even a more restaurant-specific issue than even paid leave. But real quick, talk about what this issue is all about and why it's just a completely crazy idea.
Well, the interesting thing is 25 cents a drink doesn't sound like very much. But when you take that and break it down into how much this is really going to be, and I'm not even going to take it to restaurants because you're already paying $14 for a glass of wine at a restaurant. And it's not going to be just 25 cents more because it compounds and there's pyramiding and everything else. But on top of that, you go to a retail store and a liter of liquor is going to cost you $7 more of spirits. Wine is going to be about $2.50 more. A 6-pack is $2.63 more. A 30-pack is going to be $13 more. So it really adds up. And again, this is a tax on New Mexicans because the wholesalers, where this tax is based, it's based at the wholesale level. The wholesalers are not going to take that tax and take it out of their profits. They're going to add it to the cost of whatever it is, and it's going to cost New Mexicans more. And that is in fact what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it cost New Mexicans more because they want people to stop drinking. And it's interesting, at some point people will stop drinking if it's too expensive, but more likely they're going to, this happened during Prohibition. People started making their own liquor. They started, they'll buy it from places where it's cheaper. Same with taxes on cigarettes. People go to the Native American pueblos to buy cigarettes now because the taxes are so high, and they go other places to buy, or they start vaping or something like that. The people, there is no doubt that there's a problem in New Mexico with alcohol, but it's not necessarily the price of the alcohol that is a problem. It could be that maybe we have some economic situations and poverty and other things that are exacerbating this addiction to alcohol, and maybe it's not necessarily just the alcohol itself. So I think we need to look at some other things before we start overpricing liquor.
Yeah, 25 cents a drink is incredibly expensive. A drink, is a shot for liquor. It's a 12-ounce beer. It's a glass of wine. And that would be on top of New Mexico's already fairly high taxes on alcohol, which are applied differently across those 3 different types of alcohol. So thank you very much for your time. We'll be working on both of these issues, and I'm sure several others during the legislative session. But thanks for all the New Mexico Restaurant Association does to try to stop the insanity in Santa Fe.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.